This story follows a man named Chong Yan, an underpaid engineer who collapses from the overwhelming stress of his workload. After dying, he awakens in a new world, reincarnated into the body of a prince. In this unfamiliar land, witches exist and possess supernatural abilities. Chong Yan, now inhabiting a royal identity, plans to combine his engineering knowledge with the powers of witches to advance this primitive society. His new life begins abruptly. A voice calls out for him to wake up. As he opens his eyes, he finds himself seated on a chair, stunned by his surroundings. Several women dressed in strange old-fashioned clothing stand around him. When he looks forward, he sees an entire town gathered before what appears to be an execution platform. Naturally, his mind reels. Moments earlier he had been crunching numbers, not presiding over executions. Suddenly, a bald man addresses him as Prince, and reminds him that the time for the execution has arrived. He must announce his judgment. Still lost, Chong Yan hesitates, but as he concentrates, the original memories of the body's true owner rush into his mind. He learns that he is now Roland Wimbledon, the fourth prince of Greycastle. His father, the king, has sent each of his children to rule separate territories, promising that in 5 years the one who governs best will inherit the throne. Unfortunately for Roland, his siblings possess remarkable talents that give them a significant edge. The first prince is an exceptional warrior. The second masters finance. The third princess commands a loyal following. The fifth princess is exceptionally intelligent. Meanwhile, Roland, long considered the most useless of the royal children, has been sent to a remote border town filled with filth, poverty, and neglect. Here he must somehow transform this miserable place into a thriving territory. As he grapples with the weight of this revelation, the old advisor reminds him again to issue his ruling. Only then does he realize that the accused criminal he is expected to execute is a witch. The crowd roars with anticipation, eager to watch the supposed devil spawn be put to death. Disgusted by their ignorance and barbaric behavior, he angrily swats the execution order out of the advisor's hands and commands them to release the witch immediately. The crowd falls into uneasy silence, clearly displeased with the prince's sudden change in judgment. Roland sighs in exhaustion and announces that the trial will be postponed. The old advisor tries to convince him otherwise, and Chief Knight Carter Lannis steps forward, urging the prince to reconsider. According to him, if they delay the execution, other witches might attempt a rescue. Roland cannot help but laugh at the idea of this muscular, battle-hardened knight being so terrified of witches. He casually strolls down from the platform, suggesting that if more witches did attack, they could simply eliminate them all at once. Carter, baffled, does not know how to respond. The scene shifts to Roland's residence in Border Town. Outside, the irritated knight stands stiffly while Roland firmly shuts the door in his face. Alone, Roland initially sighs in relief before suddenly panicking. He has never dealt with so many people before, at least not while alive. Yet he refuses to waste this second chance at life. Determined, he resolves to take Roland's role seriously and uncover the truth about the witch. The story then moves to the dungeon where she is being held. Despite the knight's frantic warnings about the dangers of facing a witch, Roland simply laughs at them, teasing Carter for being scared of a little girl. Carter insists witches are servants of the devil. Roland ignores him and continues forward until he finally stands before the girl labeled a witch. She rises to her feet, and Roland immediately flushes at her beauty. Carter, however, loudly steps in, urging the prince to keep his distance. Annoyed, Roland lightly smacks the knight on the helmet and tells him to stand back. He approaches the girl again and gently asks for her name. After some hesitation, she tells her story. Her father had been trapped during a mine collapse. In the chaos, a greedy miner tried to steal his belongings. She called neighbors for help, and her uncle confronted the thief. When the man nearly killed her uncle, she instinctively reached out, unleashing a power she never meant to use. The attacker was instantly reduced to ash. Horrified, the neighbors branded her a witch. Despite her pleas for secrecy, her father ultimately turned her in. Before she can finish, the advisor steps forward and urges Roland to execute her before she causes further harm. Roland waves him off. Intrigued, he wants to see this supposed witchcraft for himself. The girl is stunned. No one has ever asked her to display her powers before. But Roland, unbothered, encourages her to demonstrate what she can do. Anna calmly reminds the prince that her powers are sealed by the locket around her neck. She warns him that removing it might unleash uncontrollable chaos. Before she can finish, Roland reaches out, snaps the chain, and tosses the locket aside as if it weighs nothing. He tells her to stop stalling and show him her powers. The moment the locket hits the ground, flames begin to crackle around her. Fire gathers and swirls in a mesmerizing dance, illuminating the entire dungeon. Roland's eyes widen in awe as the cell fills with blazing light. When the heat reaches its peak, the iron bars melt effortlessly, and Anna steps through them like it's nothing. The knight, who had been trembling nearby, flees in the opposite direction. Roland, however, stands rooted to the spot, stunned by the sheer magnitude of her abilities. Only now does he understand why the advisor claimed that fire could not harm her. She is fire. As the flames dissipate, Roland's mind sparks with possibility. The engineer in him immediately recognizes the potential of such power. This kind of magic could change everything. Anna, however, bows her head and quietly instructs him to end her life, now that she has shown him the truth. Instead, Roland removes his coat and drapes it over her scorched clothing. He tells her she is hired. In his former world logic, she is nothing less than a perpetual motion machine, capable of generating fire seemingly without limit. Naturally, not everyone shares Roland's enthusiasm. The old advisor is horrified. He shouts a warning, insisting that employing such a dangerous witch could draw the wrath of the Witch Cooperation Association and possibly doom them all. Roland dismisses his panic, ordering him to prepare a work contract for Anna and to arrange proper living quarters. Later, at the administrative office, the advisor reports that the arrangements are complete, though he still questions sparing the witch. Roland cuts him off. To him, witches are not monsters. The advisor remains unconvinced, so Roland lays out the truth plainly. Border Town is in shambles. He lacks the wealth of his brothers and the talents of his sisters. If he wants even a chance to win the king's competition, he must think differently. He must rely on solutions no one else would dare to consider. Hearing his determination, the old man relents and agrees to prepare a formal meeting with Anna. Meanwhile, Anna is thoroughly washed, cleaned, and dressed in new clothing. When she arrives at the cottage Roland has arranged, the knight proudly presents the newly prepared home. Roland is impressed with the effort, especially on such short notice. When he turns and sees Anna in her maid's attire, clean, neat, and unexpectedly charming, he is pleasantly surprised. But instead of gratitude, Anna launches into a desperate rant. She demands to know why he is housing a murderer, why he is helping someone everyone else hates and fears. Roland calmly tells her he doesn't buy into the superstition surrounding witches. He believes people fear her only because they do not understand her abilities or their potential value to society. Extending his hand, he tells her he accepts her and promises to teach her how to use her power for good. Inside the cottage, Anna immediately begins practicing. Flames surge around her wildly, scorching whatever they touch. Roland quickly realizes that teaching her control will not be simple. Worse yet, every time she activates her abilities, her clothes burn away, leaving her mortified and forcing him to provide backup outfits. Thankfully, he prepared several in advance. Their training is interrupted when the old advisor bursts through the door, breathless and shaken. He brings alarming news. Patrols have discovered signs of demon activity, months earlier than expected. Roland, unfamiliar with the term, looks around in confusion while everyone else grows pale. The advisor explains that each winter, after the first snowfall and sunset, the gates of hell open within the Dragonspine Mountains. When that happens, demons pour into the land. Because Border Town is impossible to defend, everyone must evacuate to Longsong Fortress. He assures Roland that the prince's safety is their highest priority. Roland, curious, asks if the old man has ever seen these gates of hell. The advisor admits he has not. The mountains are impassable and emit a poisonous miasma that affects anyone who gets too close, unless they are already corrupted by demonic influence. Only witches can approach the mountains and see the gates for themselves. The prince then asks if the old man has ever seen a demon. Once again, the answer is no. This is his first time in the central region, and very few people ever survive encounters with actual demons. For the first time, Roland understands why this land's economy is stagnant, and why progress is slow. Every year, the entire region must uproot itself and flee. At the end of every year, Roland raises a sharp and logical point. If Longsong Fortress can withstand the demons, then demons are not invincible. With that in mind, he becomes eager to confront them himself. The old advisor is horrified by this idea, and explains why the fortress survives the annual onslaught. Longsong has massive walls and Duke Ryan's elite troops stationed within. Border Town, positioned along the North Slope Mountains, mainly serves as the early warning system for impending demonic threats. But Roland remains steadfast. He orders the advisor to gather any local soldiers who have real experience fighting demons. Later, under the shade of a gazebo, Roland and Anna snack together while discussing the threat of the months of demons. At Roland's request, Anna begins explaining the nightmare that commoners endure each year. Her voice grows solemn as she recounts the harsh reality. Her father, like many miners in town, barely survives season after season. When the months of demons begin, the people of Border Town send their yearly mining production to Longsong Fortress in exchange for next year's rations and a bit of gold. During this period, everyone hides inside the fortress until winter ends. But one year, the months of demons lasted for 4 relentless months. Longsong officials declared that the ore delivered from autumn could only pay for 3 months of food. The 4th month's supply had to wait for new ore. But since the demons did not retreat, the people were trapped inside. Provisions became scarce, and although food was distributed equally, the strong inevitably bullied the weak. Hearing this, Roland grows furious. He promises Anna that no one will ever suffer through such torment again. After leaving the gazebo, Roland asks to speak with his advisor to check on preparations. The story shifts to the border town administrative office, where Barov has gathered 3 individuals, 2 soldiers responsible for the annual patrol and beacon lighting, and a hunter who claims to have slain demons before. One soldier stutters nervously, producing incoherent sounds. Roland sighs and directs the other soldier to speak. The second explains that demons were once ordinary forest creatures, but exposure to hellish miasma turned them savage, difficult to kill, yes, but still mortal. Once the months of demons end, Longsong's cavalry sweeps the area to eliminate any lingering beasts. At that moment, the hunter slams his fist onto the floor, boasting loudly. He claims that demons are no harder to kill than slicing cucumbers, and that he has personally slain 2. The enormous man kneels before the prince. Barov introduces him as Iron Axe, rumored to carry monster blood from the Mojang clan, which supposedly explains his towering height. Roland asks if his claims are true. Iron Axe confidently confirms he has killed a demonic boar and a wolf-type demon. He then elaborates hunters classify demons into types. The common ones begin as normal animals, but become frenzied after exposure to hellish miasma. Wolf types are fast and stealthy, while boar types possess backs so thick that even crossbow bolts struggle to pierce them. Roland quickly recognizes that these demons are simply animals with enhanced traits. Iron Axe agrees, but warns that the true threat comes from hybrid demons, abominations forged by the depths of hell. He describes one such creature, a monstrous beast, with powerful legs for charging and enormous wings for short bursts of flight. Its senses were so acute, it could detect prey no matter how well hidden. Iron Axe survived only by diving into the Redwater River and losing consciousness. Roland realizes that walls can stop ground-based monsters, but flying hybrids present a different challenge. He turns to his knight and asks how common these hybrids are. The knight replies that during any months of demons, 2 or 3 hybrids typically appear, enough to give even Longsong Fortress serious trouble. With this understanding, Roland slams his hand onto the table and announces his decision: he will remain in Border Town for the winter. Everyone freezes in shock. The knight panics and insists that they are vastly outnumbered. Roland counters by proposing they build a wall from the foot of the North Slope Mountain to the Redwater River. The knight dismisses the idea immediately, arguing it would take a lifetime to construct such a wall. Roland leans back and tells him to relax. If he cannot complete the wall quickly, he will retreat with everyone else. He has no intention of dying here. The knight, finally calming down, pledges his loyalty, vowing to protect Roland at all costs. Meanwhile, at the bustling Greycastle port of Clearwater, the third princess appears. She comments on the cold ocean breeze signaling winter's approach, and turns to her knight, Ryan, asking about the return of their Black Sail fleet. Ryan assures the third princess that the Black Sail fleet should return to port within 3 days, assuming all goes smoothly. She notes that this is their final expedition of the year and hopes they bring back something worthwhile. As they walk through the palace, Ryan wonders how she prepared so quickly for the succession competition their father unexpectedly announced. She admits she never saw it coming, but believes the whole setup is merely paving the way for the king's favored son. Still, she laughs off the idea that competence alone guarantees the second prince's victory. She urges her knight to think deeper about why she launched the Black Sail fleet's ambitious expedition. After a moment of reflection, Ryan realizes the truth. The fleet isn't solely about acquiring wealth. It is a calculated move to gain influence and power. Through the Black Sail initiative, she has gathered skilled sailors, hardened fighters, and influential allies. This is Garcia Wimbledon, the third princess of Greycastle, clever, strategic, and determined to carve her path to the throne. She then asks for an update on their plot to assassinate the fourth prince. Ryan sighs, reporting that there has been no word from the border. It seems their poison plan failed, and the spies involved have disappeared. Garcia sneers, assuming her younger brother dealt with those spies as soon as he discovered their betrayal. Ironically, the poison did kill the real Roland Wimbledon. Chung Yan simply reincarnated into his body afterward, causing Garcia to believe her plan failed. She now intends to kill Roland once he flees to Longsong Fortress for winter, and she orders Ryan to wait patiently. She also scoffs that the poison seller NB lied about the poison being colorless and tasteless. As punishment for deceiving her, she casually instructs Ryan to hang him, despite the poison having worked exactly as promised. Her ruthlessness is immediate, cold, and absolute. The story then shifts to Anna. She sits peacefully among green fields with her former mentor Carl, who asks what she's reading, poetry perhaps, or church history. She smiles at him gently, but a dark memory flashes before his eyes. He sees a terrified crowd accusing his innocent student of being a witch, the reincarnation of the devil. He sees her hanging. The shock jolts him awake in his office. Gasping, he reflects on the tragedy. If a pure, kind-hearted girl like Anna could be labeled evil, then the greedy officials of Greycastle, who caused countless deaths by cutting costs with inferior stone, are the true demons. If they hadn't downgraded materials merely to save a few hundred gold coins, the theater would never have collapsed, and those innocent people would still be alive. Yet none of those corrupt administrators were punished. Instead, the blame fell on innocent stonemasons. Taxes skyrocketed, inequality grew, and unjust laws branded curious, gifted girls as devils, sending them to the gallows. He prays to God to condemn the ones who truly deserve such punishment. A knock interrupts his grief. He opens the door to find one of his young students, Nana, trembling with fear. She anxiously asks if she too will be hanged like Anna. Carl immediately comforts her, patting her head and promising to protect her at all costs. As he walks through town, his mind churns. He has spent years watching the powerful oppress the innocent. This time he refuses to stand idle. He will not allow another girl to meet Anna's fate. Then he notices a crowd gathering at the quest board. A new notice has been posted, signed and stamped by the fourth prince. It calls for laborers to construct something in the border region. Gravel workers, stonemasons, builders. Carl's eyes widen as he reads the clear, detailed announcement. He remembers the rumors about this prince. Strange, unorthodox ideas, and a personality completely unlike the other royals. Moreover, the prince supposedly dislikes the church's rigid influence, something that fills Carl with cautious hope. But supporting Anna may risk his own life. If the prince sides with the church, Carl will be executed as a sympathizer. His only hope lies in the possibility that Roland rejects the church's oppressive laws. The story returns to Roland. His knight is questioning him about the dimensions of the massive wall he plans to build. Roland explains that the wall will stand 15 feet tall and 6 feet wide, spacious enough for 4 people to stand side by side on top. His knight adds that they will need a trench as deep as a man's height to stabilize a structure of that scale. With a 15-foot height and a 6-foot top width, the base will need to be double that to ensure proper stability. Even with 350 craftsmen working non-stop on digging and construction, the knight estimates they could only finish before next year's months of demons. Roland asks what exactly causes such a delay. The knight explains that the real challenge is laying the stones. Each rock must be carefully chosen, shaped, and polished, so the pieces lock together securely. If not fitted properly, the entire wall could collapse under pressure. Roland approves the plan to dig the trench and build the foundation simultaneously. As for the stonework, he reassures his knight that he has a solution. Greycastle's alchemy workshop recently developed something called cement. The knight's eyes widen. He has never heard of such a thing. The scene shifts to the cement kiln cottage in Border Town. Roland explains that making cement is simple since the raw materials are abundant, but the challenge lies in achieving the correct calcination temperature. He admits he cannot recall the exact temperature required, and with no instruments in this world, precision is nearly impossible. Just then, the cottage door swings open, revealing Anna. Before stepping inside, Roland instructs his knight to wait outside. It is clear he has been relying on Anna's fire magic to achieve the high temperatures needed for cement. She is the perfect human furnace. Roland hands her his coat again before she emerges, once more having incinerated her clothes while working. Anna excitedly announces that she completed the task he requested. Inside, a fresh heap of cement lies on the floor. Roland examines it closely, pleased that their experiment succeeded. He decides to run tests before producing it on a larger scale. Anna asks where he plans to use the cement. Roland explains its broad applications: homes, bridges, roads, structures that can withstand rain, heat, and snow, far better than fragile wooden or mud brick houses. He credits Anna entirely, acknowledging that none of this would be possible without her. Outside, they glue several stone blocks together using the cement. Both Anna and the knight are astonished by how quickly it hardens and how strong it becomes. The knight tries prying the stones apart with all his strength but fails to move them even an inch. Roland reminds him that he underestimated the material. Cement, he says, is far stronger and more reliable than compacted dirt or clay. The knight marvels at this wonder sticky mud that becomes solid rock. Confident, the knight declares that with this invention, they could cover the entire border with walls in 5 years. Roland immediately waves the idea away. Even the tallest walls cannot protect them from enemies within. Their first battle, he says, is against nature itself. They must build homes that will not collapse and leave people homeless. And he vows to prove to the world that witches are humanity's most valuable asset. The next day, cement production begins in full. Workers who responded to Roland's recruitment notice gather raw materials and labor non-stop, giving Anna some rest. Meanwhile, Roland begins excavation for the city wall's foundation between the North Slope Mountain and the Redwater River. But progress is disappointing. When the knight proudly notes Roland's visit to the construction site, Roland sheepishly admits the truth. After all their effort, they have only managed to scrape out a crude ditch, nowhere near the sturdy foundation needed for a major city wall. Back on Earth, Roland used to geek out over mechanical blueprints with his civil engineer friend. Together they made an impressive duo of engineering nerds. But here, without modern tools or expertise, he quickly realizes civil engineering is not something he can bluff his way through. He desperately wishes he had a real stonemason or construction professional to consult. As if on cue, the advisor arrives with news. A stonemason has responded to their notice. Even more surprising, the man claims to have been a member of the famed Greycastle Mason Guild. Roland immediately recognizes the name, one of the country's most respected guilds before it was disbanded following a construction accident. Shrugging off the guild's tragic past, Roland argues that every profession carries risk. What matters now is talent. Excited, he orders the advisor to bring the stonemason to him at once. The story shifts to Roland's administrative office in Bordertown. Roland lounges casually at his desk, while Anna sits nearby, absorbed in a book. At last, the knight arrives with the stonemason Roland has been eager to meet, only for Roland to discover that the man is none other than the teacher who had been worrying earlier about his little witches. Before the teacher can begin any formal greetings, Roland waves off the courtesy and tells him to relax. But when the teacher notices Anna, he freezes, utterly shocked. His mind races, while Roland and the knight stare just as perplexed. Sensing danger or at least misunderstanding, Roland quickly orders the knight to block the door. The knight obeys immediately, planting himself at the entrance as if preparing to restrain a threat. But instead of attacking, the teacher collapses to his knees and begs Anna to forgive him for being unable to protect her when she needed him most. Realizing he is no danger to her, Roland relaxes. Anna, too, immediately recognizes her former teacher. Roland instructs the man to stand and explain himself. The teacher introduces himself as Carl Van Bate, a former member of the Greycastle Mason Guild who later became a teacher in Bordertown. He reveals that Anna was once his student. He then nervously comments that he doesn't understand why the prince spared Anna's life. Perhaps, he suggests, Roland wanted her as a concubine, but even that would be better than her being executed. Roland and Anna both stare at him, baffled by the absurd assumption. Carl becomes relieved when he realizes Roland does not believe in the church's claims about witches being devils incarnate. He then mentions that another gifted girl, Nana, has also awakened powers and needs protection. Roland immediately agrees to shelter her if necessary, though he notes he cannot take a child from her family unless she is in real danger. Inwardly, he is thrilled by the possibility of meeting another witch. Outwardly, he remains calm and composed. He explains clearly that he did not spare Anna out of sentimentality. He needs her help. He believes witch abilities are valuable tools, not curses, and as long as a witch commits no crime, he sees no reason to punish her. With that cleared up, Roland gets down to business. He asks Carl whether he has ever worked on construction in Greycastle. Carl nods enthusiastically and confirms he has extensive experience. Roland lays out his plan to construct a massive wall from the foot of North Slope Mountain to the Redwater River, an enormous project designed to keep demons out during the months of demons. From today onward, Carl will lead the entire construction effort. The scene shifts to Roland's palace gardens, where Nana arrives to meet him. She appears nervous at first, asking timidly if he is really Prince Roland Wimbledon. He smiles and confirms it. Nana brightens immediately and introduces herself as Nana Pine. Without hesitation, Nana races over to Anna and begins chatting and playing with her as though they were long-lost sisters. Roland watches them, amazed. These girls are so young yet so talented, he cannot help but wonder what the future holds for them. He turns to Nana and reminds her that Carl mentioned she recently awakened as a witch. Nana anxiously asks if he plans to execute her. Roland quickly reassures her criminals face the gallows, not innocent children. But Nana insists she must be possessed by a devil. Carl said so, and she believes it too. Anna gently pats her head while Roland asks when her powers first appeared. Nana explains that a week ago she found an injured bird. She wanted to help it, and suddenly images of water spheres appeared in her mind. Moments later, glowing orbs surrounded the bird, and its broken leg healed instantly. Hearing this, Roland sends the knight to fetch a chicken. While waiting, he muses that her ability may be connected to healing, a rare and invaluable power. He tells Nana that if she saved that bird, it proves she is a good person. Nana agrees, saying Carl explained that ordinary people fear witches simply because they cannot understand them. She insists she has never met a devil and is not influenced by one. Roland believes her immediately. He pats her head and explains that the church, and even Carl, were fooled by lies. When she asks why anyone would lie, Roland explains that it has nothing to do with morality. People spread falsehoods simply to make money. When the knight returns with the chicken, Nana hesitantly asks Roland to go easy on the bird. He agrees, then tells the knight to hold it firmly. With one swift motion, Roland gives the chicken a quick strike on the head. The poor creature squawks and collapses. Roland turns to Nana. Now is the moment of truth. He urges her to heal it quickly. Nana nods, determined to try her best. Nana gently places her hand on the wounded chicken. Immediately, those watery healing spheres appear around it. She concentrates hard, doing everything she can. Hours pass. Despite Roland's rough test, which leaves the chicken barely clinging to life, he finally understands the nature of Nana's power. She can heal injuries, mend fractures, and repair damaged tissue, but she cannot revive the dead. Once the demonstration is complete, Roland calmly instructs the knight to take the exhausted chicken to the kitchen. Nana, however, bursts into tears, Upset by how harsh Roland had been with the poor bird, he reassures her that it was necessary to understand her magic. Before long, a feast is laid out. Nana forgets her grievances the moment she sees the cooked chicken on the table, staring at it with sparkling eyes. After filling her belly, Nana waves goodbye cheerfully, and Roland waves back. Anna then asks why Nana isn't staying in the palace like she is. Roland explains that Nana still lives with her family, and they remain unaware of her abilities, but Anna fears it is only a matter of time before they find out and exile her just as she herself was condemned. Roland agrees that the risk exists, but reassures her until that day comes. Nana should cherish the time she has with her family. He then asks Anna if she misses her father. She quietly shakes her head. Roland understands her loneliness and promises that Nana will visit daily to practice magic together, so Anna won't feel isolated. He vows to give both girls as normal a life as possible, and he truly means it. Meanwhile, Roland's days become almost boring now that Carl Van Bate has taken over the construction project. Roland spends his afternoons hosting tea time sessions, while teaching Anna and Nana how to control their magic. Every so often he checks on the progress at North Slope Mountain, and is consistently impressed by how smoothly things are going under Carl's guidance. But then Barov arrives with troubling news. Hiring so many craftsmen and laborers is draining Roland's coffers far faster than expected. At this rate, Barov warns they may run out of money before spring. Roland panics internally. He is completely broke and has no idea how to fund the massive project any further. As Roland frantically brainstorms solutions, Barov studies him with unease. The prince has changed drastically, almost unnervingly so. The old Roland knew only luxury and indulgence. Barov had only stayed by his side because the king promised him the position of Minister of Finance after the succession struggle. Originally, Roland had no intention of running Bordertown, much less competing for the throne. He dumped every responsibility onto Barov and spent his days reveling in pleasure. But ever since he saved Anna, everything has changed. Roland now handles affairs with maturity and foresight, speaking in a cool, composed tone that makes Barov question whether the prince might have been possessed by a devil. But Barov dismisses the thought. After all, no devil-possessed man would casually handle a cursed retribution locket with his bare hands. The story shifts back to Bordertown's port, where two nobles and a red-haired ambassador are chatting. One noble complains that it's been a whole year since they last visited, and the town is still a lifeless pile of rocks. The redhead corrects him. It's only been 6 months. He adds that Duke Ryan sends different envoys each season. Last time he came, the place was full of exotic furs floating around, though he suspiciously chooses not to elaborate. Instead, he speaks optimistically about Bordertown's potential. With the right investments and defenses, the land between Bordertown and Longsong Fortress could be incredibly profitable. Suddenly, one noble panics when he discovers the ore stockpile is empty. Bordertown was supposed to prepare ore today for shipment before the demon season. These visitors came to collect it, in exchange for providing shelter at Longsong Fortress. Now, something has gone wrong. The ambassador sighs and insists they take the issue directly to Roland. Riding toward the castle, the purple-haired noble wonders if Bordertown has found a new trading partner, perhaps Willowtown or Fallen Dragon Ridge. He suspects Roland is behind the shortage. The redhead, thinking deeply, fears Roland may have already formed alliances downriver along the Redwater. If so, their old monopoly tricks won't work anymore, and they might lose significant profits. When they arrive at the castle, they are greeted not with chaos or excuses, but with an extravagant feast. The ambassador awkwardly picks up chopsticks, glances at Roland for guidance, and attempts to imitate him, but he can barely pinch anything. His food slips repeatedly and falls back onto the plate, drawing embarrassment and muffled laughter. Roland casually comments that chopsticks are easier and cheaper to make than forks. Once he introduces them to Bordertown, no one will have to worry about getting sick from eating with unwashed hands. As the sun begins to set and a warm golden glow fills the castle hall, Roland is just about to enjoy dessert when the ambassador finally brings up the purpose of their visit. They came to collect the usual ore shipment, only to find the dockyard empty. Roland drops the news without ceremony. A landslide recently hit North Slope Mountain. The miners have been clearing rubble for days, but there's no chance the mine will reopen until next year. When the ambassador asks about the ore production from previous months, Roland shrugs. It was barely enough to feed their own people. Even if they scrape together what little they have, the quantity would only buy 2 months of wheat. So Roland proposes changing the deal entirely. The ambassador stiffens. Sensing the prince slipping away, he apologizes for past mismanagement and offers a new proposal. The 6 noble families of Longsong Fortress can pool resources to lend Bordertown enough food for 1 month. They will repay it next year. Roland turns him down instantly. If they sell their ore to Willowtown, they won't owe anyone anything, and Willowtown is offering payment in Gold Dragon coins. Not only that, they are willing to trade wheat, cheese, bread, and honey, all at fair, transparent prices. Anything you can buy with gold, they will sell. Compared to Longsong Fortress's old exploitative system, this new arrangement is far more appealing. Roland then questions whether the ambassador even has the authority to renegotiate food loans on behalf of the 6 noble families. With one glance at his emblem, Roland identifies him as a member of the Honeysuckle family. He acknowledges that the ambassador has some influence, but asks if he can truly sway Duke Ryan and the other families. The ambassador's expression sours. Roland has hit the mark. A flashback reveals why the young man looks so troubled. Earlier, the ambassador tried to warn his father that the 4th prince was unlikely to accept their outdated trade deal. They should purchase ore at 30% below market price, still profitable but not brazen robbery. His father, however, brushed him off arrogantly, insisting that the lazy hedonistic 4th prince would never involve himself in trade matters. They could keep swindling Border Town with cheap bread and temporary shelter. Back in the present, the ambassador finally admits Roland has a point. He couldn't even convince his own father, so how can he speak for all 6 families? Still, he tries one last desperate move. He offers to buy Border Town's ore and gemstones at 30% below market price, claiming his offer must surely beat Willow Town's. After all, Willow Town is far away, and seeking shelter there during the demon season would be dangerous. But mid-sentence, he slips. He starts describing how hazardous the route to Willow Town is, bandits, beasts, broken roads, and then suddenly realizes he has practically threatened a prince. Panic flashes across his face. Roland simply chuckles. He explains that he never planned to take shelter in Willow Town at all. The ambassador freezes. Roland then drops the real bombshell. He isn't going anywhere. Not to Longsong Fortress, not to Willow Town, nowhere. Border Town will stand its ground. Roland declares Border Town will no longer be treated as a disposable outpost. It will become a true fortified part of the Grey Castle Kingdom, and soon it will boast a massive defensive wall stretching from North Slope Mountain to the Redwater River. The ambassador's jaw hits the floor. He asks if he heard correctly. Roland confirms it. They are building the wall right here, right now. The ambassador recalls a noble banquet months ago where everyone roasted the 4th prince for foolishly launching construction projects right before the demon months. They treated it as spoiled nobles teasing a hopeless prince with no sense of timing. He now realizes Roland was serious, dead serious. What shocks him even more is how drastically the prince has changed. The 4th prince, once known only for chasing pleasure, avoiding responsibility, and failing every task laid before him, is suddenly overseeing construction, reforming trade, rescuing witches, challenging long-standing systems, and discussing fortifications like a seasoned ruler. Something is happening in Border Town, something big, and the entire kingdom is about to feel its impact. The ambassador, visibly shaken by the scale of Roland's plans, promises that once he returns to Longsong Fortress, he'll try to convince the 6 noble families to cooperate. He hopes desperately that things somehow swing in Roland's favor. That night, Roland feels the downside of living in a frontier town. Nightlife here is non-existent. People go to bed early unless they're busy with certain intimate recreational activities. Though Roland could easily summon company to ease his boredom, he refuses. He does have morals after all. Suddenly someone appears behind him. He whirls around to find a robed woman praising his clever handling of the ambassador. She hints that Prince Roland may not be the hedonistic fool everyone assumes. Before he can bask in the compliment, she drops the bomb. She is an assassin. Roland reacts instantly, attempting to bolt out of the room, but a dagger flies past him and pins his escape route shut. The woman calmly tells him to relax. She only wants to talk. Freezing in place, Roland asks her who she is. She tells him she has no real name but is known as Nightingale, a title given to her by her sisters. She thanks him sincerely for treating witches kindly. As Roland studies her more carefully, he notices an emblem identical to the one Burrove showed him, marked with the insignia of the Witch Cooperation Association. Nightingale praises his sharp eyes again. Roland asks if she came for Anna. Although he has no idea how she learned about Anna, he assures her the girl is alive and well. Nightingale replies that she already knows and adds that even if Anna had been executed, the Witch Association would never retaliate by assassinating a prince. They refuse to get entangled in politics. Still, she warns him not to underestimate them. Roland repeats that Anna is thriving under his protection. Nightingale casually adds that she's also aware of Mana. Then she leans in and tells him she has been spying on him for 2 weeks straight, watching everything he does. Roland's stomach drops. He had absolutely zero idea he was being observed. She gestures for him to come closer, assuring him she will not harm him. Hesitantly, Roland sits. She moves uncomfortably close, noting with curiosity that he has no fear, not of her, not of witches at all. She leans even closer, and Roland recoils, half joking that she should keep things PG unless they want YouTube slapping age restrictions on their lives. Fortunately, she withdraws. Then she gets to the point. She steps here to take Anna and Nana. Roland refuses instantly. He insists they are happy and safe here. Nightingale argues that they would be safer under the protection of the Witch Association. where every witch is treated like family, Roland counters that the association doesn't even have a permanent home. His soldiers found traces of one of their camps in the forest last month, its tracks leading north into barren mountains. Living there would mean no food, no shelter, no resources. Nightingale insists they live in desolate mountains to avoid persecution. Roland shakes his head. Without supplies or stable shelter, life would be far harder for the girls. He also recalls Barov explaining the association's true goal: to unite all witches and eventually find the legendary Holy Mountain, where witches can live safely. He asks Nightingale if she holds this same goal. She replies cryptically that she cannot answer. Roland grows irritated. He states firmly that he will not allow Anna or Nana to live in barren lands ravaged by demons, lands unfit for human life. Then an idea hits him. He proposes that the entire witch association come to Bordertown for the winter. He beams with pride, thinking himself brilliant. They can wait out the months of demons together, safely behind the walls he is building. Nightingale is stunned. She reminds him that while he may not fear witches, the townspeople definitely will, and the church will descend like vultures if they learn witches are living openly under his protection. But Roland refuses to back down. He wants the world to see that witches aren't evil, especially if they are helping Bordertown survive the demon season. Nightingale then reveals the real reason she wants to take Anna. The girl is approaching coming of age. Roland is confused until she clarifies. Most witches awaken their powers near the months of demons. When the gates of hell supposedly open, coming of age marks a witch's final transition. If a girl has not awakened by 18, she never will. But for those who have awakened, the months of demons trigger a violent reaction. During this period, demons influence a witch's mind. The pain is indescribable, like something inside them is clawing out, trying to tear through their bodies. Every vein strains, every muscle burns. If they survive, they recover in 4 or 5 days. Those who don't die horribly. People believe witches are devil spawn because their agonizing deaths during maturity, combined with church propaganda, make it look as though demons possess them. Roland, still trying to make sense of all this, asks what happens after witches reach adulthood. Nightingale explains that once they survive their coming-of-age ordeal, their powers stabilize and often grow stronger. Some even gain entirely new abilities. Roland then questions the truth of the old records claiming witches can find eternal peace on the Holy Mountain, safe from demonic influence. Nightingale admits the Holy Mountain is little more than myth, mentioned only in cryptic texts. Taking Anna to headquarters might slightly improve her odds, but as long as witches are hunted and forced to hide, demonic attacks during maturity remain severe. Roland realizes something crucial. Anna and Nana are essential to his long-term plans, but if keeping them here puts them in danger, those plans mean nothing. After a moment of thought, he agrees to let Nightingale take Anna, if Anna herself wants to go. As for Nana, he'll speak with her the next day. Nightingale is delighted by Roland's apparent wisdom, but when Anna is summoned and asked for her decision, she rejects the offer immediately. The adults freeze in shock. Nightingale tries to reason with her. She tells Anna she can already sense the demonic energy stirring inside her, a sign maturity is close. She reminds Anna about the puberty talk Roland awkwardly gave her earlier. Anna, however, stands firm. She reminds Roland of his promise to give her an ordinary life. But that's not what matters most. She wants to stay by his side. She insists she'll survive her maturity and conquer it. Demonic energy won't stop her. Nightingale sighs. She gives up trying to persuade the stubborn girl but announces she will stay nearby and watch over Anna throughout the winter. She thinks Anna is too naive to understand the deadly risks ahead. Roland doesn't love the idea of being watched all season, but he doesn't argue. Before leaving, Nightingale faces Anna directly. She speaks of the hardships she has endured, the friends she lost, and her vow not to let Anna share their fate. With those words, she vanishes, literally fades out of existence. Roland is stunned. Her assassination skills are beyond anything he imagined. Once alone, Roland gently pats Anna's head and tells her it's late, time for bed. The next day, Roland addresses the people. Morning comes, and Roland greets the townsfolk with surprising cheer. He gathers everyone for a critical announcement. He explains that 4 days ago the ambassador from Longsong Fortress arrived to collect the usual ore shipment, but as everyone knows, the northern quarry collapsed a month earlier, halting production. The crowd grows fearful. Their last output was half the usual amount, and they still remember the starvation and suffering that followed. Roland then exposes Longsong Fortress's hypocrisy. He tried to negotiate for supplies, but the ambassador rejected him outright, just like 2 years ago. People panic again, recalling the families lost to hunger, the children buried, the grief they were forced to swallow. Roland asks how long they intend to endure this misery. The crowd begs him to save them. Roland nods solemnly and promises he will never let them fall into that pit again. After a dramatic pause, he drops a bombshell. 2 months of ore should have been enough to buy nearly a year's worth of food, but Longsong has been cheating them all along. Outrage explodes through the crowd. Their resentment toward Longsong Fortress boils over. Roland raises his hand and continues. Instead of repeating the same unfair deal, he traded their minerals to Willowtown and secured enough food to feed everyone through the winter. Cheers erupt, but Roland quiets them. There steps a catch. Cutting ties with Longsong means no evacuation. They must stay in Border Town during the months of demons. Fear spreads again. But Roland cuts through it with conviction. He reminds them of the wall they are building. Demons, he says, are no worse than forest beasts. They cannot scale a properly built wall. Then he gives them a choice. Seek refuge in Longsong Fortress and starve, or stay in Border Town and fight to protect their families. He asks who will stand with him on the wall. He promises fair silver wages for all defenders, and if someone falls, he pledges 5 gold coins to their family. The crowd erupts with determination. One by one, then all at once, they shout their resolve, ready to defend their homes. Meanwhile, in Longsong Fortress, laughter echoes throughout the castle halls. Nobles mock Roland's decision to stay in Border Town and build a wall. To them, the fourth prince is still a joke, an incompetent fool playing ruler in a backwater town. But they have no idea how wrong they are. The nobles in Longsong Fortress continue mocking Roland. One man with a thick mustache jokes that Roland will probably just stack rocks together, smear some dirt, and call it a wall. Eventually, he says, the foolish prince will beg Longsong for help, and when he does, they can squeeze him for everything he has. But the committee leader isn't as dismissive. He turns to the ambassador for a proper report. The red-haired ambassador, still rattled by Roland's unexpected competence, explains their original plan: maintain the monopoly as always, buy Border Town's ore at a price 3 times lower than market value, easy profit. But Roland ruined this simple setup with a completely different strategy. Instead of selling exclusively to Longsong, Roland plans to sell to multiple buyers. He's even willing to cut ore prices by half to stimulate demand, drive production, and grow Border Town's long-term revenue. And while lowering prices reduces immediate gains, Longsong would still earn far more over time by tapping into a thriving border economy. On top of that, Roland aims to mass-produce iron tools, items that would sell anywhere. It's an entirely new industry, and a lucrative one. And there's more. If Roland successfully holds off demons at Border Town, Longsong Fortress won't need to deal with annual monster cleanup, and when the 5-year throne competition ends, Longsong could easily inherit the kingdom's 3rd largest territory if they help Roland develop it now. The ambassador suggests they support Roland's wall project. Help now, profit massively later. The white-haired elder snorts at the idea. To him, this isn't about economics. He doesn't want to share any power or territory with a prince, especially not the 4th one. The steam engine reveal. The next day, the knight's jaw nearly hits the floor when he sees Roland's latest invention. Roland proudly credits Anna, who helped him weld the metal pieces. It sets a steam engine. Roland hugs the machine like it's his firstborn child. To him, it's the spark that will ignite an industrial revolution. Anna fires the furnace beneath it. The knight watches wide-eyed as the gears begin to turn. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. The mechanical wheel spins with growing force. The knight is astonished. This is the natural power Roland described. Strength equal to 10 trained knights. And unlike knights, this machine doesn't set get tired, doesn't sit need food, doesn't set care about weather, and can set be hurt by blades or arrows. Training a knight takes 15 years. Building this contraption took 3 days. For the first time, the knight wonders if knights themselves may become obsolete. Roland, meanwhile, is thrilled. His farming and manufacturing capabilities just jumped forward by centuries. Nightingale returns and takes the blueprints. Later that night, Roland opens his bedroom door and finds Nightingale once again, this time casually reading through his private blueprints. He scolds her for sneaking into his room, but she just laughs. She says the 4th prince was rumored to be useless with a horrible temper, yet the inventions in his notebooks are on a master craftsman's level. She asks if the blueprints are for the machine he unveiled today. Roland, disheartened by her rummaging through his secret plans, credits Anna again, explaining the machine could handle heavy labor and production tasks. Nightingale smiles. She announces she'll be taking the blueprints back to the Witch Association. Many witches could use the fire-based tech. Before Roland can object, she tucks them inside her robe. Roland's eyes accidentally dip downward. He panics and stutters in embarrassment. Nightingale smirks. "You'll get payment," she says, pulling a letter from inside her clothing and tossing it to him. Roland tears it open eagerly, only to find a message meant for his servant, Tib. The letter commands T not to fail a second time, and orders him to assassinate Prince Roland during the months of demons. Roland's mind spins. He remembers the old Roland's cruelty toward Tai, exploiting her whenever possible. The memories unsettle him deeply. Nightingale explains she intercepted the letter from a pigeon. There's no signature, but she suspects one of his siblings sent it. She asks whether she has his permission to investigate further. Roland gives her a firm yes. With a respectful gesture, she accepts the order, and declares she'll be taking the blueprints as payment. She vanishes moments later, leaving Roland staring at the empty air, aware that his life is now entangled in a much larger conflict than he ever imagined. The next day, he was still hung up on last night's letter when the knight arrived. The boy immediately dropped to his knees and confessed that TA had kicked the bucket during the night. Apparently, she had taken a tumble from her balcony. There were no signs of a struggle, and the guards swore they never saw anyone come or go. Visibly upset, the boy told the knight to have the head servant take care of the situation. Once the knight left the room, our hero called the assassin woman back, and she appeared right on cue. She quickly revealed that the servant had killed herself the moment she laid eyes on her. The boy couldn't hide his disappointment, muttering that he expected her to handle such things better. The woman countered that she had restrained T with ropes, but the servant had hidden poison inside a fake tooth. Once the poison took effect, the assassin threw the servant from the balcony to make it look like an accident. Even though the interrogation had reached a dead end, she pulled out another note she had found in Ty's apartment. With a sly grin, she pointed out that the sender called Ty Big Sister and mentioned a seaside view repeatedly. She hinted that there was a strong chance the third princess from Clearwater Port might be involved. She suspected that Princess Garcia Wimbledon could be holding Ty's family hostage, using her as a pawn to eliminate our hero. Judging by how Ty had chosen to end things, it seemed she had been trained for years before being assigned here. The boy felt deeply disappointed that his own siblings were so quick to eliminate each other for the crown. Suddenly the woman leaned close to his ear and whispered that she had to go because someone was approaching. He blushed slightly, perhaps catching a glimpse of her shirt straining before she vanished into thin air. Just then, the old consul arrived with good news. A number of people had volunteered to face the demons during the demon months. This put a broad smile on the prince's face, and he decided to see them for himself. Before he could leave, the old man genuinely asked whether he truly intended to send regular townsfolk to fight demons. Outside, the hero's mood sank further. The consul's concerns were absolutely valid. These people didn't look like fighters at all. They resembled street thugs at best. The knight, however, was thrilled, insisting he had gathered them according to the prince's wishes. But looking at their frail bodies, it was clear the knight had completely missed the point. The prince face-palmed, realizing he had expected too much from people who were barely surviving as it was. Even the consultant suggested they look for other recruits instead of relying on commoners. But the hero was determined to use them anyway. He believed he had already cracked the code. Building a strong army depended on people power, whether they held medieval swords or modern weapons. The knight suggested starting sword training the next day, but the hero waved him off. He told the knight to group the volunteers, then hit the jogging trail. He also requested that the Iron Axe hunter be brought along. The prince assured him to sit back and enjoy the show. By noon, the hunter had joined the cause, though the knight was unimpressed by the new training methods. Coming from a proud warrior family, he found it ridiculous that these recruits were being rewarded with eggs simply for standing around all morning. Eggs were expensive after all. But once again, the hero told him to relax. He knew that building a top-notch army could not be done in a few medieval months, and he wasn't trying to create muscle-bound fighters. All he wanted were disciplined soldiers who could deliver results quickly. He was using military techniques he had learned in college, methods that united people fast. He believed these villagers would adapt just as well. Before long, carriages arrived and everyone lined up eagerly for their eggs. Many still didn't understand why eggs were being given out as rewards. The knight banged his plate loudly to get their attention and ordered everyone to form 4 lines. Food would be distributed in order, and stragglers would have to wait. Nervous but compliant, the crowd lined up. The knight still couldn't understand why the prince bothered teaching such basic discipline. Suddenly murmurs rippled through the crowd as they chanted the name Iron Axe, who evidently had quite the reputation. The prince announced a break after lunch, followed by a trip to the town guard barracks. Iron Axe was appointed as their captain, tasked with teaching them how to pitch tents. As soon as the hero finished speaking, the crowd buzzed with disbelief over someone like Iron Axe being placed in command. To calm them, the prince reminded everyone that Iron Axe was not a local, just like the witches who didn't belong to Greycastle. In Border Town, everyone was treated equally. As long as they were not criminals, they were welcome. Then the prince unrolled a sheet of rules so long it could rival a year's worth of grocery lists. He told the chief knight to focus more on these rules than on who became captain. Everyone needed to memorize and follow them if they wanted their daily egg. The chief knight scratched his head, wondering how visiting teacher Carl was supposed to help with any of this. After dinner, the knight wondered aloud how reading and writing could possibly help in fighting demons. The prince brushed off his concerns, insisting that a well-educated army was always more effective, and that history had proven this many times. Next, we arrive at City Hall in Border Town. Our hero staggered out of his room, still half asleep, When Nightingale suddenly appeared out of nowhere, she teased him about his newfound habit of sleeping so much lately, and it seemed she had also helped herself to his breakfast. The boy was not exactly thrilled to see her eating his food and waltzing into his room uninvited. He muttered, wondering if she had ever been taught to behave more subtly around royalty. As he took his seat, she adopted a respectful posture and asked if she was being polite enough. Then, just as casually, she mentioned that she knew the prince wasn't the type for unnecessary formalities. He was startled that she understood his preferences so well. With a sigh, he told her to finish the entire breakfast so he could at least request another serving. While she dug into the food, the prince began flipping through his new blueprints. Nightingale, curious, asked why he had been ordering so much iron lately, especially since it was the dead of winter. If he wanted to cool his whiskey, she pointed out, he could simply leave it outside. When she saw his order book wide open, Roland realized she must have seen all of his recent requests, so he fed her a story. He was trying to make cheese, and for that he needed temperatures below freezing. The girl praised him for his cleverness, but inside our hero admitted that this was a lie. He was hiding something far more confidential, something he did not entirely trust her with. Unlike Anna or Nana, he wanted to gather more information about Nightingale before revealing his actual secrets. In truth, he was developing guns, which were much easier to produce than steam engines. If anyone uncovered his methods too soon, it could derail his entire plan. The ion he had ordered was actually saltpeter, commonly used by wealthy nobles to cool their drinks in summer. Its fancy name disguised its more important function. It was a key ingredient in gunpowder, making secrecy even more critical. Changing the subject, the boy asked whether witches also trained assassins, aside from their search for the Holy Mountain. Nightingale explained that a group of oddballs had gathered together because of that shared dream. She herself had joined the Witch Cooperation Association 2 years ago. Hearing this, he asked if she had worked for someone else before joining the association, and whether anyone accepted witches at all. Setting down her plate, she laughed at the idea, calling it ridiculous. If her previous owner had known she had become a witch, he would never have allowed her into the front door. Worse, had she not proved useful to him later, he would have quietly disposed of her. The boy grew more curious and pressed her for details, but she fell silent, promising to explain everything when the time was right. She reassured him not to worry, saying she had been free for the last 5 years and had no intention of becoming anyone's pawn again. He stayed quiet, looking somewhat downcast. 5 days passed since their chat in the courtyard, and by then our hero had finally finished his first gun after a series of production challenges. He was thrilled to keep it to himself. One major reason he had been pursuing steam engines was to create a way to mass-produce guns, but he needed a working prototype before scaling up. At this pace, he worried he would only manage to make 4 guns before the demon months arrived. The knight, meanwhile, was scratching his head, trying to understand how these so-called muskets would help in fighting demons. The boy simply told him to gather the village's best hunters and form an elite squad to wield them. But the prince shuddered when the knight suggested using patrol guards instead. Considering how frail and puny they were, his reluctance to hand such valuable weapons to them was more than justified. Deep beneath Roland Castle, a few soldiers marched through the tunnels. Suddenly one of them leapt into the air and attacked another. The scar-faced soldier ordered the thin-mustached man to surrender or meet the same fate as their fallen comrade, Greymutt. Remembering his friend, the thin-mustached soldier grew furious and swore he would never let these hooligans set foot in the castle. With a burst of strength, he flung the scar-faced man back, sending his sword flying. He then drove his own blade into the man's left shoulder, declaring it was for Greymutt. Bleeding heavily, Scarface scoffed, shocked that an ordinary patrol guard could injure him. The thin-mustached soldier grew even more irritated at the remark. He made it clear that while Scarface had spent his time gambling and sleeping in taverns, he and his friends had been training daily to protect their hometown. He swore he would not allow Long Song and his cronies to disturb their village's peace. As he leapt forward to finish his opponent, another cocky figure joined the fight and stabbed him straight through the chest. The poor soldier writhed in pain from the dagger wound and collapsed to the ground. The intruders stood confidently over him. Shockingly, the thin-mustached man managed to pull the dagger from his chest despite the agony. With one swift motion, he hurled it toward a nearby torch. The blade shattered the torch, extinguishing the flame and plunging the corridor into darkness. Up in the castle's food storage, the thin-mustached soldier hid inside one of the bins. He was certain the infiltrators were here to sabotage the food supply. If they succeeded in spoiling everything, Border Town would be forced to evacuate to Longsong Fortress. The thought crushed him. While the prince worked tirelessly to improve the town, he had failed to protect a vital food reserve. Suddenly the door behind him creaked open. His face drained of color as the same rowdy soldiers stormed in. One of them grabbed him by the collar and slammed him to the ground, ordering him to stop running and surrender to Duke Ryan's demands. In case anyone had forgotten, Duke Ryan was the white-haired aristocrat determined to keep the prince far away from his territory. Despite the threat, the soldier stood his ground, he boldly declared that his prince would foil Duke Ryan's plans. The intruders laughed at the idea, brushing off the prince as insignificant. Their leader ordered his men to finish off the soldier and ruin the food stores while they were at it. Without hesitation, a lackey struck the thin-mustached soldier on the head. As consciousness slipped away from him, he wondered if this was how he would die. But fate had other plans. Nightingale appeared in the doorway. She coolly asked whether the intruders were enjoying themselves in someone else's territory, then warned that their little party was about to end. They demanded to know who she thought she was. Nightingale replied that she was simply a local from Border Town, then mocked them for looking like sewer rats sneaking out of the drains. The intruders clearly had no idea how outmatched they were. Their leader barked at his crew to attack the mysterious woman. She only smiled. In a blur of motion, she swung her hand and bodies immediately hit the ground. With fading vision, the wounded soldier watched this enigmatic figure dispatch the intruders effortlessly. Before he could understand what had happened, he slipped into unconsciousness. The next day, their corpses lay scattered across the food storage. The knight inspecting the scene scratched his head, trying to piece together who could have taken out the intruders so cleanly. He knew the injured thin-mustached soldier could not have done it. The only explanation was that some outsider had intervened, an expert who required no assistance. Their moves were so precise that the enemies stood no chance. Not a single barrel was toppled, no blood smeared, not even a scratch marked the floor. The knight began to suspect that someone with extraordinary skill in the sword arts was nearby. Feeling a surge of pride, he thought of his clan's long history of knightly tradition. The investigating soldier added his report. The autopsies were finished, and the bodies identified. 8 were from Longsong's guard, and 1 remained unidentifiable. When asked about survivors, he explained that Captain Brian was receiving special healing, while Scarface had been thrown into the dungeon and locked away. The knight ordered Scarface to be awakened immediately for interrogation. Meanwhile, the prince was irritated. He had barely made any progress in his new initiatives, yet enemies were already trying to undermine him. Still, he felt grateful that Nightingale had intervened. She reassured him that the intruders never would have reached him anyway, not with Anna sleeping right beneath his floor. That was when the prince had an idea. He proposed that Nightingale become his secret bodyguard. He offered generous pay, living quarters with a garden, 2 days off per week, and paid vacations. Despite the enticing deal, she politely declined, explaining that she could not leave the association or her friends. The prince suggested bringing her entire group to Border Town, insisting that there was plenty of room after the recent expansion. He promised they would face no discrimination and could live freely. Once again she declined, saying she might consider it in the future. The prince was left feeling awkward after being turned down so directly. He then asked if she had safely escorted Nana home after healing the soldiers. Nightingale confirmed that she had. Nana had been frightened by the sight of so many wounded people, which was understandable. She was used to tending chickens, not treating human injuries. Returning to the conversation, the boy asked Nightingale whether she had figured out which of his siblings might be behind the infiltration. She shook her head. This time, it wasn't one of his siblings at all. The culprits had bribed Border Town's patrol guards, and their plan was so sloppy they even left 2 witnesses alive. Witnesses who didn't even have the nerve to take their own lives before being caught. She assured him they would uncover the truth soon, since the chief knight was already interrogating one of the infiltrators. She also pointed out how surprisingly weak and tearful these intruders were compared to the third princess's assassin. While peace returned outside the castle, our hero walked beside the chief knight to visit the thin-mustached soldier. When the soldier saw the prince enter the room, he was shocked and scrambled upright in bed. The prince began by praising Brian for his bravery and the fight he put up, but Brian grew emotional, insisting that the real hero was his fallen friend, the one who had sacrificed himself. The prince reassured him that his friend's funeral would honor him properly. As for Scarface, he would face full punishment. He was scheduled to hang in 3 days, and the prince hoped Brian would recover in time to witness it. Thin Mustache then mentioned that Scarface supposedly had noble blood, hinting this might cause trouble with Longsong Fortress. The prince dismissed the concern. Scarface might have been distantly related to the Elk family, but he had no title or land. Besides, he had tried to burn down Border Town's food stores, an act too serious to overlook. After promising that someone else would handle patrols, the prince ordered Brian to focus on healing. Once the demon months arrived, he intended to honor him as a brave knight of the prince. Next, we moved to the city wall, where the new recruits were training under Hunter Ironaxe. When Ironaxe spotted the prince approaching, he barked for everyone to stand at attention. The prince, however, seemed to have no idea what to say during an inspection. Awkwardly, he walked up to a random soldier and asked, with a friendly smile, how training was going and whether he was eating enough. The soldier looked terrified, while the prince appeared to be imitating something he had once seen on TV. Suddenly, the soldier dropped to his knees, leaving the prince confused and more than a little unsettled. Tears welled in the soldier's eyes, and not just his. Many recruits were overwhelmed that the prince had personally come to check on them. The prince gently urged the soldier to stand. It was clear the meals he had been providing had lifted their spirits and strengthened them. He reminded everyone that they were free to share suggestions or complaints, and promised they would always have enough to eat. Out of nowhere, the shy boy from earlier raised his hand. He pointed out that their civilian army was too small, and with the way they were training, they might not stand a chance against the demons. Murmurs spread through the crowd as others admitted they felt the same. Some wondered if the prince planned to hire mercenaries. But the hero raised his hand and cut off the speculation. With a grin, he asked the boy for his name. Nervously, the soldier introduced himself as Vanner. The prince praised his insight and agreed that relying solely on a civilian army made little sense. However, he reminded them that demons were simply mutated beasts, not nearly as intelligent as humans. Iron Axe backed him up, confirming the beasts behaved just as the prince described, though he noted that hybrids posed a more formidable challenge. The prince then explained his idea. They would use fences, ditches, and hills to guide the dumb beasts into carefully prepared traps. He was confident the strategy would work, given how simplistic the creature's instincts were. Iron Axe still looked uneasy, reminding everyone that bows and spears would be useless in close combat. The prince smirked, knowing exactly why traditional weapons would fail. That was why he had created a new kind of weapon, stronger and more reliable than an entire squad of armored knights. The crowd buzzed with excitement. At the testing grounds, a massive explosion suddenly tore through the area. The blast shook the earth, stunning the recruits. While everyone else was horrified, the prince was ecstatic. His gunpowder experiment had worked perfectly. Iron Axe muttered that it felt like the wrath of God itself had struck the land. The explosion left a huge crater and obliterated the test rabbits. The prince told everyone to come closer and examine the scene so they could record useful data. He was thrilled that mixing a few elements in the right proportions could produce such power. With everything wiped out by the blast, Iron Axe suggested they wouldn't have to fear monsters at all if they had access to such a weapon. But the prince reminded them that they would never have enough gunpowder. Before the month of demons arrived, the prince was still excited about relying mainly on guns and crossbows while using gunpowder weapons as their trump card. In the next scene, Nightingale described how the world looked through her eyes. Everything appeared in black and white, with no fixed boundaries. Paths twisted and overlapped, shifting direction at will. Up, down, left, and right were meaningless. By navigating these ever-changing lines, she could soar through space with a bird's-eye perspective, passing through anything that wasn't black or white. At times, she could see faint hints of color. Witches especially stood out. They carried the essence of magic, and she could sense that magic flowing within them, waxing and waning like a pulse. Among all witches, only they possessed something truly extraordinary. Anna's magic, however, was unique and vibrantly rich. Her presence glowed more brightly than any other. Suddenly Anna called out to her, pulling her back into the real world. When Anna asked what she was doing, Nightingale smoothly changed the subject, offering fish cakes she had brought along. Anna's face lit up instantly. Nightingale hesitated, saying she needed to wash her hands first, but instead of using water, Anna simply cleansed them with a burst of flame. Nightingale was stunned. It hit her then that Anna was the only witch among them with such exceptional dangerous power. That realization filled her with dread. With the month of demons approaching, Nightingale feared Anna might suffer unbearable pain during her coming-of-age transformation. She gently suggested that Anna join the Witch Cooperation Association, where the others could support her. Everyone would be thrilled to welcome someone as powerful as Anna, but her tone shifted when she quietly admitted that she herself might not survive the winter. Anna then asked where Nightingale had lived before joining the association. Nightingale replied that she once lived in a large city east of the capital. When Anna asked if she had been happy there, Nightingale's mind instantly flashed to her past. Cold shackles, a magic-suppressing locket, and a life of misery. Rather than answer, she turned the question back to Anna. Anna opened up. She had lived a harsh life in the slums of Bordertown. Her father had sold her to the church for 25 golden royals. It was the prince who had freed her. Now she was genuinely happy to be in the castle. Nightingale gently reminded her that leaving wasn't an option, given the hatred most people held toward witches. But Anna remained hopeful, believing the prince could change things for them. Their conversation was abruptly cut short when Nana burst through the door, crying and clinging to Anna. Something terrible was about to happen. Meanwhile, our hero was fast asleep, dreaming of glorious exploits. Nightingale violently shook him awake, furious. Nana's father was on his way, and he suspected his daughter was a witch. Shocked, the prince scrambled to prepare. Perhaps he now had a chance to keep Nana in the castle. He imagined the father pleading for help, begging the prince to protect her secret. Reality shattered those expectations instantly. When the prince stepped outside, Nana's father was livid, demanding his daughter be returned at once. After they sat down, the restless father called Nana over. Terrified, she asked if he planned to sell her to the church again. Her father scoffed, saying the church would never accept someone as clueless as her. He ordered her to come home. But the prince intervened, reminding him that Nana was a witch. The man rejected the idea entirely. Even when Nana confirmed it herself, he grew angry and suggested Teacher Carl must be misleading another child. The prince looked at Anna and gave a small nod. Anna raised her hand and demonstrated her fiery powers. The old man froze, shocked beyond words. The prince urged him to calm down, promising to explain everything. Gradually, Mr. Pine began to understand. His daughter wasn't being harmed. She was here to learn how to control her abilities. Still, the prince felt unnerved when he realized Mr. Pine had assumed he was luring little girls into the castle for inappropriate reasons. Finally, the prince got to the point Nana had healing powers that would be invaluable during the demon months, when the wounded would desperately need her help. But Mr. Pine declined. The danger was too great. The prince countered that opportunities always came with risks. He reminded Mr. Pine of his own family lineage. Nana's grandfather and Mr. Pine's father had been courageous knights, earning their family noble status through heroic deeds. Mr. Pine agreed proudly, recalling how his father once killed an unusually powerful demon. The creature's massive horns still hung above their fireplace. But then the prince gently pointed out that the Pine family was not as prestigious as it once had been. Now, they were simply working-class citizens. Mr. Pine sadly admitted that the prince was right about his family's decline. The prince then noticed the man's rough, calloused hands, evidence that Pine had never abandoned his warrior spirit and still trained daily to hone his sword skills. Seeing an opportunity, the prince cleverly suggested that Pine join the town's defenses. If he helped protect Border Town, the prince promised to grant him enough land to restore his family to true noble status. It was a tempting offer, but Pine shook his head. He refused to gamble his daughter's life for any reward, and insisted Nana would be safer in Longsong Fortress. The prince reminded him that Longsong was far from safe. The church had eyes and ears everywhere there. If word got out that Nana was a witch, not even he could protect her. He assured Pine that if things grew dangerous, he would prepare a small boat for a quick escape to Longsong, ensuring both Nana and Anna could flee without risk. Finally, Mr. Pine exhaled, placing his trust in the prince. He bowed respectfully and pledged his loyalty, declaring he would fight for the prince's cause. Relief washed through the room. Everyone smiled, except Anna. She pouted in clear frustration, furious that the prince would even consider sending her away. She declared that she wasn't going anywhere. The next day, the old constable arrived, looking distressed. He fretted that they had burned through almost all their money on weapons and training. At this rate, he feared the entire town would starve within months. The prince face-palmed and told him to dip into his personal savings to cover the budget. The old man agreed, but pointed out that this still wouldn't fix their long-term financial problems. The prince shrugged, saying that if their defenses failed, they would simply evacuate the town. Then he sent the constable away to handle the matter. Once he left, the prince felt crushed. Every coin he had saved was now gone, and if the defenses still collapsed, everything would fall apart. His mood lifted only when Nightingale suddenly appeared. She immediately noted that he had lied to the constable about evacuating. The prince admitted it. He didn't want to spread fear among the already anxious townspeople. Nightingale told him he should spend more time with Anna rather than worrying about politics. She confessed her fear that Anna might not survive the winter, but the prince insisted she would. Anna had promised she would defeat the demons no matter what. Nightingale asked how he could put such trust in a witch cursed by demonic influence. He simply shrugged, saying he believed in her, and in Nightingale as well. Her expression softened. For the first time she realized his faith wasn't an act. He added that he never lied without a good reason. Suddenly, a noise outside caught her attention. She glanced through the window, visibly tense. It was snowing. Winter had officially arrived. The prince decided to check on Hunter Ironaxe at the shooting range. Ironaxe was firing the guns with precision, hitting bullseye after bullseye. When the prince greeted him, Ironaxe lit up with excitement. He proudly reported that he had mastered all the basics he'd been taught. The prince wasn't surprised. Ironaxe had always been a natural warrior capable of mastering any weapon placed in his hands. The hunter praised the iron pipe of the gods, marveling at its devastating power. He grit his teeth, saying that if he'd had such a weapon during his encounter with the hybrid beast, it wouldn't have survived a second. Overwhelmed, he dropped to his knees, vowing he would never betray the prince's trust. The prince then checked in with Chief Knight Carter, who looked tense. They needed more than just the 2 guns currently available. The prince understood and assured him that 2 more were already being built. He admitted they had rushed the gunpowder development simply because the month of demons had arrived so fast. Up on the city wall, soldiers bowed their heads when the prince arrived. He felt embarrassed, wishing he had taught them proper military etiquette. Ironaxe pointed out that demons were rare after the first snowfall, but the prince warned him not to relax. Then they spotted something in the distance. A demon alone, approaching slowly. Panic flickered among the soldiers. One asked if he should sound the alarm. The prince told him to decide for himself. He had more experience now. After a moment, the soldier chose not to sound the alarm and lowered his bow. The prince felt relieved. Their training was finally paying off. The creature picked up speed, charging toward the wall. Squinting, the prince wondered if it was a mutated fox. Iron Axe confirmed that the beast had recently been possessed and posed minimal danger. Still, as it prepared to leap over the wall, Iron Axe drew his bow. Carter stepped in front of the prince protectively. The beast lunged. Iron Axe's arrow flew through the air and struck the demon instantly, dropping it dead on the spot. The prince leaned over the wall, observing the strange black blood oozing from its corpse. He wondered why demonic beasts bled like that and why witches could recover from demonic influence while animals never could. Curious, he asked whether someone bitten by a demon could transform into a mindless ghoul. Iron Axe scoffed, insisting no such creatures existed. The prince let out a sigh of relief, comforted that he wouldn't have to deal with a zombie apocalypse on top of everything else. He then asked if the demon sep's meat was edible. The knight almost had a heart attack. Why on earth, he demanded, would the prince even consider eating cursed meat? The hunter agreed, recalling the time he once fed a chunk of demon flesh to his hunting dogs, which immediately killed them. The boy sighed in disappointment, thinking it was a total waste of good meat. Both the knight and the hunter were stunned that the prince had actually considered eating it, but our hero reminded them how scarce food had become. It would have been a blessing if they could have eaten the meat they were hunting down. Suddenly a soldier burst into the room, shouting that someone was hurt. It wasn't a guard this time, but a worker from the northern mines. Meanwhile, Nana sat alone until Nightingale appeared out of nowhere, asking if she was bored. The little girl nearly jumped out of her skin, terrified by the sudden appearance. Nightingale quickly apologized and explained that Anna was still busy with her work, and might return soon. When Nana asked if Anna was still dealing with those dirty mounds, Nightingale nodded. Nightingale then sat down and absent-mindedly grabbed Anna's tea without asking. It was clear that Nana was feeling discouraged about her new assignment. The prince had tasked her with healing the wounded guards. It wasn't that she disliked the work, but seeing the injured men left her shaken. She wanted to overcome her fear so she could keep using her ability properly and wished she were as brave as Anna. Suddenly, Nightingale spotted someone approaching, and a soldier rushed in, urgently telling Nana to come downstairs at once. A severely injured patient needed her help. In the infirmary, the wounded man screamed in agony, begging his prince to end the unbearable pain. Seeing the miner so desperate made our hero uneasy. He wondered whether the man's burns came from the steam engine malfunction at the northern mines. Nana stepped into the room, trembling as she approached the charred miner. Her father gently placed a reassuring hand on her head. Nana swallowed her fear, steadied herself, and declared she was ready. Once the curtains were drawn, she took a deep breath, summoned her power, and began healing him. Moments later, the man was completely recovered, looking as fresh as a newly picked cucumber. Her father, witnessing her healing ability for the first time, was stunned and proud, calling it nothing short of a miracle. Knight Brian happily chimed in, saying that Nana had once saved him from the brink of death too. The prince immediately panicked, signaling him to keep quiet. Nana had healed him in secret, without her father knowing, and he wasn't eager to face the man's anger over it. Now fully conscious and healed, the miner couldn't believe he was alive. Prince Roland assured him it was real and revealed that Nana, one of the witches, had saved him. Later that night, when our hero returned to his room, Nightingale greeted him and demanded to know why he had revealed Nana's secret so soon. This led him to recall the moment when the miner learned she was a witch and panicked, shouting about witches being devils. Nana's father quickly shut him down, reminding him that his daughter had saved his life and had nothing to do with devils. Overwhelmed with guilt, the miner dropped to his knees before Nana, apologizing and thanking her profusely. Back in the present, our hero explained that revealing her identity had been the right move. If they planned to use her powers against demons in the coming months, hiding the truth would become impossible anyway. Besides, the church forces had already departed for Longsong Fortress, leaving no one behind to harass the witches. Nightingale asked if he had planned all of this from the beginning. The boy confirmed it. With the snow blocking the roads and the seaports under his control, the church had no way of learning what was happening in Bordertown, let alone taking action. This gave him 3 full months to change the public's view of witches. He pointed out how Nana was now seen as an angel by the soldiers she healed. As she continued treating the wounded, morale would rise, and the townspeople's prejudice would slowly fade. Nightingale still didn't understand why he was doing so much for the witches, so she asked him directly. Our hero repeated that Bordertown did not judge anyone by their origin. Even those as hated as witches deserved to live on this land just like everyone else. The woman's eyes widened as she heard our hero's grand plans. It was clear she had something important to confess. She admitted she hadn't been entirely honest with him earlier. The prince was caught off guard, and she began explaining how her sisters in the association had been wandering for years, losing hope along the way. Now all they wanted was a safe place where they could be happy, even if it was just a single castle. At first, the boy didn't understand what she meant, but then the realization struck him. she was actually open to bringing all the witches to Bordertown. Before he could get too excited, she grounded him with a warning. If witches gathered at the castle, he would eventually have to face the church. The boy calmly reassured her. The church's main headquarters was far away, and even if they learned that witches were living in Bordertown, they wouldn't march all the way to Greycastle just for him. He was already planning to gather enough influence to rival the church, and create a world where witches could live alongside ordinary people. He dreamed of expanding that world throughout Greycastle, and maybe even across the entire kingdom. The scene then shifted to the capital of Greycastle. Soldiers on horseback marched through the streets until their captain suddenly called for a halt. The man looked eager, finally returning to the castle. Fireworks lit up the sky as the people welcomed the one approaching the city gates. Gerald Wimbledon, the first Prince of Greycastle. It was amusing how these people had enough explosive material for fireworks, even though it had only been a few chapters since our hero invented gunpowder in this primitive world. The gates lowered, and Prince Gerald entered the city with his entourage. Once inside, he wasted no time announcing that he had come to claim what was rightfully his from his father. 3 shady figures appeared, bowing before him and reporting that they had completed their assigned task. Gerald asked if they had managed to replace the royal guards as planned. The lackey admitted there had been complications. They had only managed to replace the guards in the king's chamber. Gerald dismissed the issue, saying that as long as he and his men could enter the castle, everything would go according to plan. The lackey reassured him that no one would be able to stop their entry. An old man stepped forward, mentioning that Gerald's fate star, the Heaven Star, was leaving the equinox, and would disappear from this hemisphere in about 4 months. He asked Gerald if he remembered what the movement of that star signified. Gerald drifted into his childhood memories of playing with his younger siblings, then snapped back and said he understood perfectly. It meant the time had come to break the rules of the challenge their father had set, and Gerald would take the throne of Greycastle. Approaching the king's room, Gerald suddenly noticed a strange metallic scent. He asked about the smell of blood. The old man explained that the king had summoned a servant girl, who realized the guards had been switched. They had to dispose of her. Strangely, the king hadn't called for any women since their mother passed away. As they approached the door, the old man pointed out the absence of patrols, which made moving around the area easier. Gerald scoffed, saying he wasn't sneaking around like a rat but walking in proudly to discuss inheritance. And if talking didn't work, he had other methods in mind. He gripped his sword, leaned closer to the door, and the blood smell intensified. He peeked inside, then smashed the door open. Inside, he found his father lying dead with a dagger in his chest, and standing over the body was his younger brother, Timothy Wimbledon, the second Prince of Greycastle. Seeing his brother, Timothy claimed he hadn't wanted to do this, but he had no choice, just as Gerald apparently had no choice but to come here. Almost immediately, soldiers emerged behind Gerald, surrounding him and catching him by surprise. Gerald demanded to know how long Timothy had been planning this. Timothy explained that their father's decree was like a chess match. He had intended to follow the rules, but the third princess had started playing dirty. He accused Gerald of doing the same, pointing out that the first prince wouldn't have rushed across the kingdom without being tipped off by his astrologer lackey. It became clear that the lackey had betrayed Gerald as well. The old man insisted he hadn't lied. When the Heaven Star leaves the equinox, it symbolizes a seeker losing their way, but it also foretells downfall. Infuriated, Gerald shouted at his brother, reminding him that he had always been their father's favorite, given every advantage, yet he was the one who killed the king. Timothy only grinned, shamelessly pointing out Gerald's hypocrisy. After all, Gerald had also come here prepared to kill their father if negotiations failed. Gerald trembled, shaken by the brutal truth. He asked Timothy if he had lured him here intentionally to eliminate him as well. Timothy simply shrugged, saying he never planned to confront their sister. He only needed to wait in place to kill his older brother. He even admitted he was impressed that their sister had foreseen all of this before the decree was ever written. Timothy went on to explain that he wanted to end the royal decree early because his Valencia city wasn't like their sister's Clearwater port, which was producing warriors like rabbits. He needed an army, one big enough to challenge her, and that would only be possible if he possessed the Greycastle crown. The first prince, enraged, charged at Timothy, but the surrounding soldiers quickly intercepted him. One struck him from behind with a spear, forcing him to his knees before his brother. Timothy coldly informed Gerald that he would be framed for killing the king and condemned as a murderer, destined to meet the guillotine. The soldiers pinned Gerald down as he protested furiously, demanding to know whether Timothy even had the right to judge him. He vowed to expose Timothy's crimes to the world, but Timothy had already prepared for that. He revealed a potion called the Silencer. Once someone drank it, their voice would be permanently stolen. With Gerald executed and no other heirs in line, Timothy planned to play the grieving son flawlessly and claim the throne without resistance. He even urged his brother to curse their sister for the cruel fate he was about to suffer. As soldiers dragged Gerald away, his mind drifted to childhood memories one last time. The astrologer servant, the traitor, began addressing Timothy as king, proudly proclaiming the crown was now his. Timothy praised the man for his loyalty, then immediately pulled out a deadly pill and ordered him to swallow it if he wished to avoid becoming a future liability. Timothy then turned back toward his father's corpse, gritting his teeth in frustration. A flashback revealed the truth. When Timothy had warned the king that Gerald was heading for the capital with plans to forcibly seize the throne, the king simply grinned maniacally. Before Timothy could make sense of it, the king drew a dagger and plunged it into his own chest, killing himself instantly. Now in the present, Timothy was infuriated, desperate to discover who was manipulating the chaos behind their fight for succession. He was determined to hunt down whoever had interfered. The women who had visited the king earlier were likely involved. Back in Border Town, things had been peaceful. The steam engine prototype in the mines had been repaired, no accidents had occurred, and no demons had shown up recently. Our hero had been enjoying a rare moment of calm, brainstorming ways to grow the town's economy and refill his empty coffers. But that peace shattered when a night burst in with alarming news. A massive horde of demons was swarming outside the walls. At the border, below the fortress wall, monstrous howls echoed through the air. The soldiers stationed atop the wall looked horrified by the sheer number of creatures. Among them was Vanner, a former miner who had joined the army simply to eat eggs. One of the beasts charged the wall, slamming into it with tremendous force and shaking the entire structure. The impact left a noticeable crack in the stone, though the monster collapsed moments later. A pack of wolf-like demons began advancing next. Hunter Ironaxe barked orders, telling everyone to brace their spears. As the wolves scaled the wall, Vanner gathered his courage and thrust his spear on command. One wolf managed to leap onto the rampart, but the captain quickly drew his gun and shot it through the skull. With the immediate threat neutralized, Ironaxe warned everyone to remain alert. Suddenly a soldier cried out as a creature pierced his abdomen, spilling his innards. The sight nearly sent Vanner into shock. Fortunately, the knight and the prince arrived in time. The knight reminded Vanner of his training, snapping him back to his senses. Vanner immediately ordered the wounded man taken to the hospital while the others held their ground. The prince couldn't help but smile at Vanner's discipline. All those eggs had not gone to waste after all. They had helped build a competent civilian army. Then something unexpected caught everyone's attention. Even our hero recoiled at the sight of it. The hunter, equally horrified, drew his gun. They had encountered a monstrosity unlike anything they had seen.